Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I am thrilled today to have as my guest Reverend Dr. David William Perry. Um, Disclosure a bit, David is a friend of mine. I've known him for a little while now. A fabulous human being, brilliant, and quite the scholar and the artist. And you're a bishop, I believe, with the Old Catholic Church.
Well, you know what church life is like. What do you mean? It's complicated. I'm an old Catholic bishop, but I'm only a priest in the Old Catholic Apostolic Church. So I'm both, but I only currently draw on the position of priest, which I'm very happy with. You know, too much admin. Who wants to be a bishop? My God. So I'm very happy pottering around and doing all that. Old Catholicism's my thing. Yeah. So a bishop, certainly by rank, but not by application. Not at the minute.
Okay, that's good to get that straightened out because it's different than the what we usually think of as Catholic. And you just finished up a new PhD. Now, is this your second one?
My second doctorate.
Yep.
My first doctorate, I should say honorary doctorate, forgive me, was actually a church doctorate. So
Yeah.
I wanted to balance that with a secular PhD.
Mhm.
I'm actually in the process of just getting involved with my next doctorate, the final stage, a Doctor Philos at Bergen in Norway. I mean, that's the step above. You know, Scandinavian education is way above here. So to finish off that process once and for all, there is nowhere else you can go after that, unless you want to be a professor, which I don't be. You know, I don't want that at all. I see myself more as a carefree, firm buttocks artist than I do that. And
Yeah.
that's no disrespect to them, but it's just like being a bishop. You know, so you're hamstrung with all these rules and regulations. That's not me. That's not me. That's not me.
Yeah.
So, as much as I respect them, and we know a couple of professors that really are worthy of respect.
Oh, yes.
Um, but you know, so no, that's I see my karma and my destiny going in a different route. So, but I do. I mean, it came about almost by accident. I've got this sort of book floating around on Henrik Ibsen, who has been an obsession of mine for I can't remember how many years. And it was someone over there. I don't want to give names and places yet because I think that would be rude before it's all finalised.
Right.
But they said, well, you know, what are you pottering around for, man? Doing all that? Why not send it to us? I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's Scandinavia is wonderful. I'm not
Yes.
sure we can live there because of reasons I told you of a minute ago. But
Yeah.
certainly, the cultures are wonderful. They're real democracies, unlike Britain. Let's get the dagger in early.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for America, but I bloody can speak for Britain. You know, nobody's listening to anybody, so enough's enough. And I
Yeah.
think my wonderful partner, my wonderful husband, really needs a shot at a proper job, which is not going to happen here.
He's
So yeah, I
brilliant.
mean, that's me and that's him, and you know that's the karma of the situation, William.
Yeah. Well, no, he's finished his PhD or he's in the throes of it still.
Third year, third year.
Okay.
So I mean, I was sort of gossip. I was sort of lucky. I mean, what I did at the University of South Wales in Wales, which is an absolutely wonderful institution. I deliberately keep clear of all the posh universities because I don't approve of them. You know, if you're Lord Snot, oh, here's a certificate. No, 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 no.
They
Work
didn't used
for
to
it.
be that be. You used to have to work for it no matter what title you had.
Oh gosh, if only that had ever been true in Britain. That has never
It
been true
wasn't?
here. No, no, no. I mean, there's still a
Oh,
scheme. There's still a scheme in Oxford, which is the worst. I don't respect Oxford or Cambridge in the least. They're buckets of filthy privilege, and if they are happy with that, shame on them. Yeah,
mhm,
there's still a scheme in Oxford. Whereas if you say get a bad first degree, say a thirds, if you hang around for 2 years, they give you a master's for about £100, £100. Absolutely outrageous. And they
Yeah.
still do it. They still do it.
Okay.
If you're Lord Snot, oh my God, is that him taking the exam or is that somebody else?
Right.
Outrageous, outrageous. So no, I tend to stick with your plebeian universities because I'm happily plebeian, which have weirdly and ironically, or perhaps not, have much higher academic standards. You have to work. They want you to work. But my situation was sort of weirdly different. I mean, I entered the process as a reasonably well-known British poet and got
Right.
talking to one of the academics there, the astonishing Professor Kevin Mills, who said, well, I mean, as a negotiations move, I mean, have
Yeah.
you thought of doing it by portfolio as
Okay.
opposed to actually doing a whole thesis? And I said, well, no, I hadn't really thought of that. And he said, well, as far as we're concerned, the work has been done. So all we really need is to see a bridging thesis. Where do you think all of this stands in the great tradition of British literature? And I thought, well, that's interesting because, that's the one thing I haven't written about. So, yeah, they said, okay, we'll select 3 of your books. We'll assess them. So I'm in the wonderful position of having 3 books having been found worthy by a British university.
Right.
And I wrote 15,000 words. I sent you a copy to sort of
Yes.
roughly, to roughly say, well, this is what I'm about and this is what I'm doing. And they were very happy. I shot myself up the A during the Viva. You must have a Viva in European education. So, I had a chance to be loud. So I was very happy at husband. But I shot myself up the proverbial. I managed to enchant the committee so much they wanted extra work from me. I'd reached my word limit, so I wasn't sure I heard them properly at first. And
Right.
it was Professor Mark Knight who convened the committee, very, very erudite individual, who said,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's interesting, but you haven't written about it." And I said, "Well, I can't. I've got about 20, 30 words left. I can't write about it." And he said, "Oh, forget that, forget that. Would you mind writing 5 extra pages so I know where all this is coming from?" And I thought, oh my God, how interesting. So
Yes.
I wrote it. Sort of, I hadn't really thought what academics, where they wanted to place it. I was quite clear where I was placing it. But
Mhm.
what they thought about my positioning of my own work and in relation to British academia, which actually hasn't looked particularly deeply at the sort of core that I was examining, which was one of the reasons my Viva was quite enchanting and a good old chinwag. I mean,
Yeah.
heavens knows what people go through otherwise, but I mean, I'm coming to 68 this year anyway. Heavens, whatever, whatever.
Oh, you youngster.
Oh, what from venerable
I'll
sages, I think.
Yeah, I'll be 70 in December.
You don't look a day over 30, William. You don't look a day over
Oh,
30.
bless you. Um, British men never lie. I will take that.
It is a compliment, I promise. It is a
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's the story of that. I mean, as
Yeah.
I say, I managed to intrigue them. Shut up, David. Shut up, David. So they said, "Well, how long do you want?" And I said, "Well, I basically know what I can say now. Give me 2 weeks extra." So they gave me 2 weeks, and I sent the revised version in. Sort of to my horror, because as I say, hardly any British academic has looked at it. So they thought, "Oh, that's fun. That's fun." I know they want me to do something else on it, but as far as I'm concerned, that door is closed now. I've said what I wanted to say on the great and weird tradition of neofolk.
And I
Um,
wanted you to expand on that a bit during this, if possible.
it would be a great honor. I mean, in technical terms, in analytical terms, I'm actually a neofolk poet.
Okay.
I mean, that's why if you read my Wikipedia, it reads like the Wikipedia of a Nazi.
Oh,
There's all this folkish stuff,
uh-huh.
and nobody's bothered to use the word neofolk, so they don't know
Okay.
what it means. They don't know what it means. Yeah, so I mean, I'd say easily for about 30 years, those are the those are the circles I've moved in, and I've met some, how can I put that? They're very challenging people in those circles. I've
Yes.
also met some saints in those circles.
Yes.
And I was sort of one of the people really interested in the artistic potential of that community. I mean, right, let's look at it. Neofolk basically is a melding. It's an alchemical marriage. It's a union divina between folkish interests. It's like an epicycle in the great romantic tradition, I suspect. Looking back at the resources that we've lost, looking back through the lens of very dark atmospheres, ambient music, the recovery of heathenry and paganism. Ha ha ha! So all of a sudden, my position in those worlds is explained. And I'm very proud of my position, such as it is in those worlds. But yes, I confess there was a reason I was exploring all of that. So they look back at sort of myth, legend, but their feet are very, very firmly rooted in the 20th, 21st century. So if we're looking at the musical side of the movement, it will be all electric guitars and the state of the art, this, that, and the other. Because what they're trying to do, the musicians in the movement, they're trying to marry the best of the folkloric, the mythic traditions of ancient Europe, in my case, of course, largely Britain, because I don't like commenting on other people's mysteries unless I feel I've got a grasp of them. But who can grasp a mystery? So Britain, I'm sort of okay. But if we're looking at Germany or France or Italy, then no. Maybe a comment or two, but not a big statement. So the musicians are extraordinary. I mean, I even mentioned Throbbing Gristle in the thesis. I was told by one of my supervisors he never, ever, 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 ever thought he'd see Throbbing Gristle in anything seriously academic, which that hadn't crossed my mind either. But I see both of your points. But for me, it's more. I mean, there are artists where they see it more as sort of a visual field of references. The zines, the posters, the objet d'art, the objects that are made and sold, found objects in the arts. Also created objects, created paintings, created illustrations. Because in Neofolk, there wouldn't be this hard and fast division in that sense. It's all a continuum. I would say it's much more to do with the romantic tradition let's put that differently. The romantic tradition than postmodernism, although I'm very sympathetic to postmodernism. What postmodernism is trying to do, to my mind, is revive ancient sources, ancient resources, but from a modernist angle. Let's try and put some life back into all of that. And I think, well, that's interesting, but it's not really going to work. It's good that somebody's criticizing modernism as it turned into. It's always materialistic. Human beings are always bags of chemicals. They're always in a satellite car driving to Satellite City. And people tend to forget what's been denuded, what's been lost, like the whole human condition has been lost. And if you want to live your life as a future robot, absolutely great, but not everybody does. So we in modernism and what became of modernism, we've actually, in my humble opinion, lost far too much of what it means to be human and the magic of life. So
You're right. My understanding of it, and just looking from this culture anyway, and I'm not trying to be rude or political to anyone, but really the dumbing down of culture and the dumbing down of communication, the inability for people to read or listen past the first comma, if they can get that far. And it's been a problem. University professors, especially those teaching freshmen, are saying these kids can't read.
Yeah.
They don't have the attention span to read even mildly academic work.
Yeah.
Anything that they can't sum up in one or two lines.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do the work to focus through and push through, because you can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got ADHD and I've got a master's and a bachelor's, and my bachelor's is history.
Yeah.
I mean, you do a lot of reading and writing on a history degree.
Yeah.
Back in the days when I wrote my papers on a manual typewriter.
Oh, you must send me a copy. You must send me a copy. Oh, I mean, it's
And
getting even worse here. Somebody in one of the scientific magazines I looked at recently was saying children are less good at forming internal images now,
oh,
where they're so overstimulated and everything is done for them on the screen. Yeah, yeah.
mhm,
But that very human capacity of having inner imagery and I know people wrote against that, but I mean, right, as I'm sitting here now, I've got Big Ben in my mind. They're wrong. There we are. It's as simple as that. Um, so we're denuding too much of our condition as human beings. And sort of Neofolk for me was the perfect recipe, the perfect cookbook, the perfect way of keeping all these disparate elements together. And
right.
also, of course, although I'm trying to steer clear of it, though we mustn't steer clear of it, there's a heavy esoteric current running through Neofolk. There's a heavy occult sensibility, dare I say that awful word of culture, which if we're looking at occultism as a cultural material and all the sigils and signs and books and genres that go along with that, all of a sudden it's this sort of rich treasury of human potentials, human failings, but human potentials. So it was a great way of meeting psychics and mystics and misfits and monsters.
Mhm.
And that for me is Neofolk and sort of where it turned around and what I was up to. I don't know if that answers you, William. So.
Oh, it does. It really does. And I've I've read the abstract of your thesis and I've gotten into it a little ways, but oh, I don't remember what day you sent it, but this week has been so busy. I just haven't been able to get through the whole thing yet. Um, but it's fascinating. And part of what I love about it is I have to think and I have to work at it because I'm not surrounded by academic work all the time anymore. I mean, I still read it for pleasure
Yeah.
sometimes, but I've just had so much going on. I haven't been when I'm ready, when I have time to read, I don't have the energy to think, which
Yeah.
is tragic,
Yeah.
actually. I
Yeah.
hate that.
Yep.
I'm
Yep. Yep.
working on
Yep.
it.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I'm working on it, but
Well, it's a
I'm
gift.
slow.
It's a gift, and I intend to send you a hard copy as a proper gift anyway.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, I mean, you are a friend of mine nowadays. Don't be silly. I mean, I want to
Yeah.
share this bit of work because it became important to me. It started as a
Mhm.
pain in the ass, but it sort of became important to me because it's a sort of statement of lots of things I've been up to. So, I
Good.
want to share it with my friends and hope they find some sort of value in it because for me it's sort of a statement of intent, a statement of history in many ways.
Right.
I mean,
Needs
the biggest reaction I've had so far is, "Are you going to write an autobiography?" Which is on my mind, but it's not it's not center stage yet. It's not something I'm working on at the minute. So
I can see where that would be a very worthwhile project. But there is a sense of art in your thesis as
yeah,
well. It's not just academic. And you make a statement about needing to write as you,
yeah,
not so much as strictly academic. And that comes through, and that's part of what makes it enjoyable.
thanks.
It brings life to it because sometimes the thesis can be kind of dry.
Yeah,
Informative, fun to read, but a little dry because
yeah,
people write,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean,
and
the genre's worthy of respect. I mean, it took so many
yes,
hundreds of years to get to it, so
yeah,
it is worthy of respect. But I didn't want that at all. I mean, they're very happy with it at USW. I noticed the first thing they did was put it on their website, so they're
oh, good,
very, very
yes,
happy with it. Um, but for me, I mean, I don't know. I came to an agreement with everyone involved that at first I was going to choose an argument because they gave me the choice of genre. In what way do you want to approach all this? And I thought about it, and it was actually Kevin that said, well, why not an autoethnography? Why not biography? Do it in that sort of way. And I was really umming and ahhing about that because, I suppose, rather like yourself, we've had the training. You're given a problem, you raise arguments about the problem, you raise problems with the problem, and then you
Right.
answer. And it's a nice, straightforward way of doing things.
Mhm.
Once you're used to it, it's a nice, straightforward way of doing things. But
Right.
it was Kevin that said, well, I mean, the material doesn't really fit that. So are you really, really, really sure you want to do it that way? And I suddenly thought, oh, I'm not. And it needed the personal touch to bring it to life. Otherwise, I thought, well, otherwise it's going to be incomprehensible to somebody outside the arts.
Right.
If you're in the thick of it all, I mean, it started, I suppose, for me in the mid 80s when I started collaborating strongly with other people, powerfully with other people. We formed something called Gruntlers Arts Group, because I was interested at that time in words that lose a prefix or a suffix. So everybody's heard of disgruntled, and I thought, well, I mean, if you get a disgruntled, you must get a gruntled because all that's gone missing there is the prefix. And that is the case. I mean, a couple of 100 years ago, they would have said, "Well, I'm gruntled. I'm gruntled," and I
Mhm.
thought, "Excuse me, let's try and revive that." And it was a group of misfits and ne'er do wells like myself. I just moved to London, and we met sort of staggeringly intelligent people and trans activists before they were trans activists,
Mhm.
UFO spotters. I mean, the lot. We used to get together in pubs and restaurants and talk about visionary literature, poetry, science, art. And that was what we did. It was food as well as the food and drink that surrounded us.
Right.
It was by the gosh, let me try and think of the time frame with him. I can't remember if I mentioned Gruntlers in the thesis, which is why I might have to do the autobiography. It was about 1990, I think, where somebody said it's about time you put your poetry on the stage, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done that because it was never self-evident to me that poetry should be on the stage. Never. And in the land of Shakespeare, it should be. But and people had told me what the reasons were. They told me what the arguments were, but it just never clicked to me. Oh, isn't that something else? Isn't that something else? But it suddenly clicked. I mean, the penny dropped. Yes, I can see how you give an extra dimension to the flow of sentences, to the pausing, to the silence. The silence can be incredibly powerful on a stage. Um,
Yes.
so we started meeting together and working towards that. I mean, it eventually, many years later, developed into us holding regular multimedia events at the Poetry Cafe in Covent Garden, London, which was the sort of cafe meeting spot of the Poetry Society. That august institution that has people buried in the cathedral.
Right.
So we were, well, I don't know what they thought of us, but we were happy meeting there. It was a nice place, and we started getting rave reviews, which is not what interested us, but that was happening. And that sort of eventually evolved. Some would say devolved, but it eventually evolved into lots of other allied projects. But it was all under the aegis of the Gruntlers Arts Group, which the last manifestation of that was Gruntlers Cabaret, which was my stab at the Cabaret Voltaire. We can do better than you. Which lasted about a year. I think that lasted about a year, and it transmuted into other things where British politics. Don't worry, listeners, watchers. I'm not going to. We'll be here all week, so I'm not going to get into it. Um, it started blanking British culture in a way it never had done before, or at least hadn't done in a long time. So we transformed it into an incredibly controversial experiment called, oh, I mean, God, I'm trying to think of the different names. I mean, it started as the Extremists Club. There were some dangerous people in that in that assortment of people. I was met by someone I better not name in the National Gallery. We went for coffee and we went for pastries, and said, "Well, I can bring the right wingers. Can you bring the left wingers?" And I thought, "Oh, yeah, what an interesting thought."
Yes.
So what we were trying to do was develop a literal forum for anyone to have their say. So the idea of extremists was you could be extremely good at something. You could be an extremely good grass skier, but it
Mhm.
also went to somebody holding, extreme ideologies. I mean, I don't think we actually got any of those because they keep themselves to themselves.
Right.
We had a couple of very heated political exchanges, and when that sort of fitted that that sort of period of life. I mean, we had 2 years of, again, rave reviews. The critics loved us. We couldn't do any wrong. We made this huge dent in the culture of London, which is no easy feat. But I think, most of these projects, unless you've got serious funding, they sort of evaporate after 2 years, 2.5 years. So we started running out of speakers who were judging what we were doing past on previous work, and they sort of missed the point of what we were doing. And the whole thing began to peter out, and we were denounced in a couple of places. And I thought, well, you haven't done your homework and you haven't visited us. But that's life, isn't it? Life nowadays. I mean, my God. So we wound that down, but for a while it was magical in the extreme. I'll give you a case in point. As I say, the co-founder was a very right-wing gentleman who had better not be mentioned. But the idea was, what have we got anything in common at all? If we do, what is it? And we were very successful, by the way, in finding common ground. I mean, the
Yes.
club secretary was a Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah.
And I would always lead the groups. I mean, my persona was the wig, WHIG, and I would wear a wig, sort of 1800s Dr. Johnson, sort of Samuel Pepys, because you had to find a way to keep the buggers under control. It got very lively.
Right.
So I noticed that I had this strange power over people if I did that. And we weren't let down many times, but there was one occasion when one of the acts, forgive me, that's the sort of carny theatrical side of me coming up, had let me down with 10 minutes to go. I mean, that is absolutely unreasonable. And I was fuming. How on earth do we feel this? We all met in a pub called the Coffee House to begin with, old Dutch settlers meeting there to talk about revolutionary ideas like democracy and gravity. So we
Right.
met in this place because it seemed appropriate.
Yes.
In Soho, the dangerous area, radicals. So they couldn't make head nor tail of us, but they gave us a room. I mean, we hired a room. But so most of the acts, most of the performers, most of the speakers were gentlemen and ladies, but this one bloody let me down at the last minute. So I was fuming, and so I shouted at the club secretary, "Bloody keep them under control while I try and sort this out." Right, we're having our break now. Since it was in a pub, of course, I could send them all downstairs. Can you get your refreshments now? So right, I've given myself half an hour.
Right.
By the time I got back, which was slightly more than half an hour, I noticed our club secretary had all of them, including the right wingers, singing old Soviet songs, which they loved, which they all loved. They thought it was one of the best evenings everyone had ever had at the Extremist Club. And so he saved the day by pure accident, and it taught me a lot about warring factions. I mean, maybe we just all need to sit down and cut each other some slack. And remember, we're all human. And just share
Yes.
some opinions and see what's going on. I don't know what you think of that.
Listen to each other.
Yeah,
And uh, work at understanding. And often the differences, and I don't mean the hateful things,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
the homophobes, the Islamophobes, and all the rest of it.
yeah,
But and those are often based on fears and misperceptions even, but, um, so often people are coming to the same place, but
yeah,
from different ways.
yeah, yeah,
And when you can talk, there was a movement in this country several years ago, and I was part of a parish then actually that was part of this for a
yeah,
while. And it was Osala Lenski was part of had started, I think, a lot of this. And it was getting people of opposite sides and such. And in Chicago, the rabbis were going to the mosque with the imams,
yeah,
and the imams were going to the synagogue with the
yeah,
rabbis,
yeah,
and they would become friends and have dinners together. Um, it's and the Christians and the non-Christians and everybody, getting a chance to understand each other as human beings.
yeah,
And all of a sudden,
no,
oh, you're really not the enemy. You're my friend.
yeah,
You
yeah,
got the same color blood I do, and you've got the same desires.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you want a safe, comfortable,
yeah,
reasonable life for yourself and your family,
yeah,
and so do I. What's the difference?
yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean,
and
I
it
agree
made
with
some
you.
progress.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, there are some people that are just mindlessly prejudiced,
Oh,
but
yes,
they're far fewer than those with prejudice through misunderstanding or ignorance. And
right,
that needs to be remembered. I mean, as you know, I'm an openly gay man and always have been.
right.
I mean, I go all the way back to the early days of the Gay Liberation Front in Britain. I mean, it started over there, I seem to remember. Where, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
you
don't
don't see it.
remember when it started.
Yeah, I mean, America, I can't remember. It was after the civil rights movements, I think. But I mean, that's an American thing and a good thing that came over here. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
see many pictures of me because I'm at the back praying with people. You know, it
uh-huh,
taught me a lot about publicity and fame. Unless you're at the front with all the cameras, you don't get picked up. But
right.
I preferred doing what I was doing. You know, what can you say? And in
But I
those
was
days,
too afraid of losing the job, being outed to
oh,
family, doing all this stuff
yeah,
to want to be too public.
yeah,
Although I did a lot of public events, I helped organize a lot of
yeah,
well,
yeah,
the biggest fundraiser, the biggest civil, gay rights group in the state had. I was on
yeah.
the committee of 4, you know,
Oh, you're a
and
bit of a legend, young William. You're a bit of a legend. I know a bit about you.
oh, you uh-oh.
Oh no, good. Nothing but good trailblazing American American sturdy pioneer material. I think it's wonderful. We need more
Oh,
of that. We need that spirit back.
yeah, thank you.
Um, but it's not a British spirit. I mean, that's the other, I'm saying that in a sad way. You know, I mean, in those days, if you try and pioneer anything here, you're the enemy of the state.
Well,
Because
that's the way
everything's
it is here now.
oh, yeah, but right, the joy of America, the joy of America. I think people think I'm turning anti-American. I'm not. I'm disappointed, like lots of other people. Yeah, I'm disappointed with what happened to America. I mean, America, as far as I can see, excuse me, was this beacon of light to the planet. You know, there was somewhere safe and there was somewhere open and there was somewhere free. And no matter where you were from, you stood a chance of having a good life. What a wonderful wonderful, 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 wonderful thing. I mean, I'm not sure many people would believe that now, and I don't. Uh, yeah, I think
No,
it's still in America more than lots of other countries. But you know, compared to what it was, that light has diminished, I think, and that saddens me no end. So I post. I never post anything anti, but I post saddening things sometimes. I try
right,
and never comment on other cultures and other countries because you know what do I know about this thing? I
right.
post a great deal about Britain, but you know, it's not my place because I always get the feeling, you know, you might have missed something in the discourse if it's over the pond or somewhere else. So you know what? Don't embarrass yourself.
Sometimes that can happen, but sometimes too, the eyes on the outside, if they're getting about a complete picture coming to them.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
the eyes on the outside can see things that the people in the inside miss, or
yeah.
you can also be coming at it without all the prejudice
Yeah.
that the people living here already have.
Well,
And,
I don't
and
know.
that tempers how we see things.
Well, maybe I'll be a little braver. I mean, I don't want to talk about American incumbents,
No,
but because what do I know? And I'm a mere Brit, a limey. What do I know? But it strikes me that maybe the incumbent isn't quite the way people see him on every front, because world politics itself is altering. Um, People are suddenly waking up to the fact that resources really are finite.
yes,
Therefore, politics is going to get ugly.
yes.
That explains Putin.
Mhm.
That explains Xi Jinping. These people have already woken up to it. Someone was telling me recently that the Chinese are mapping out undersea territories. They've got their people on submarines going around with aquanauts, and they're staking their claim to these vast territories under the sea. This is now
They're looking
Chinese. Oh my God, where
are
does
they
it
looking
start?
for, um, mining territory
Yeah,
or
mining
yeah,
territory and minerals. I mean,
uh-huh.
there's a tacit war going on at both of the poles. I don't mean
I know,
anything
it's really
military.
dangerous.
Yeah, it's
It's
very,
so
very
dangerous.
dangerous now. Yeah, I'm not into this sort of conspiracy black pyramid. They're all
No,
Martians out to get us. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm much more worried about the reality of the big global powers in fraught situations with each other, because there's a diamond mine underneath the ice, or there's
right,
gold, or there's oil. I mean, those are real dangers
or
in a
rare
world
earths.
yeah, and we know it's finite now. I think
Yeah,
that's what's creeping into the system, and that's what's changing politics. And therefore, I dread to think what sort of politicians we'll all have in about
yes.
10 years' time. So,
Well, that's why we went to the moon,
yeah, yeah,
and that's why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, and
yeah,
they're very open about this.
yeah,
NASA wants to go for the science, but the commercial enterprise behind it, it's all, "What can we find to exploit?"
yeah,
And, I mean, they're already planning on basically on destroying whatever resources and delicate balances these places have. The
yeah,
frozen water is going to be used for fuel and drinking.
yeah,
Okay, well, that's very limited source.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, so let's use up places that aren't even n conducive to life, as we know life anyway. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I
I
think you're right. And then you get the problem of ego
yeah, yeah,
and mental health.
yeah,
Putin is a complete narcissist, and he's
yeah,
wanted to put back the Soviet Union since it fell. Frankly, he wants to be Peter the Great
yeah,
or Ivan the Terrible, is more like he acts,
yeah,
and reconstitute the glory days of the
yeah,
biggest part of the Russian Empire.
yeah,
Um, Z, I don't know as much about, and I don't know how much of this is ego and how much of this is the commercial, the whatever. He seems, out
yeah,
of the three that were
yeah,
included, he seems the most sane.
yeah. Well, I think from what I've heard, he sees himself as restoring Confucianism.
Okay.
So you're looking at something very traditionalist,
Mhm.
where you've got a completely unelected bureaucracy, an all-powerful bureaucracy. So that China's known that as a reality for most of its history. And
I
he
don't
sort of
think there's
wants,
ever been a time when it was truly any kind of a representative democracy.
yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure that would make sense, William, to the Chinese psyche. I mean, yeah, what do we all mean by that? I think that would be their
Exactly.
attitude. So, but
Yeah.
I think he sees himself as some sort of restorer of,
Mhm.
this sort of all-powerful stability,
Mhm.
which we will then have to deal with as foreigners, which is interesting. Oh yeah, I'd agree with you completely. I mean, Putin thinks he's Peter the Great. Darling, you are not Peter the Great. I mean, let's face
Yeah.
it, you're just not.
And we've got
I
one that
think.
wants to be emperor of the world. And,
Oh, yeah. I think the China. I don't know. I sort of can get on with the Chinese. At the end of the day, it's all about trade. It is.
you know what their motivations are, and you know that they
Yeah,
are following a well thought out plan.
yeah,
They're not arbitrary.
yeah,
They're not acting on emotion or whim.
yeah, yeah,
And in some ways, that makes them more deadly. In some ways, it makes them less
yeah,
so because you can actually, if you have reasonable people with a
yeah,
reasonable mind
yeah,
going into talks and negotiations, you actually go in knowing what's really going on
yeah,
and can determine how to work with it. I like win-win. I'm not
yeah,
asking anybody to sacrifice their country.
yeah,
I'm just, l- we've got limited resources. We've got all these people. Let's work together to preserve life
yeah,
in a healthy,
yeah, yeah,
reasonable way. I
yeah.
mean, makes sense to me.
Yeah, as I say, I'm less angst personally about them than various other bodies and people, and
Yeah.
yeah, I just wish we could. Shades of Nostradamus. What was it? The
Yes.
yellow armies coming over the top of the world. I can't remember what it said now. Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. But or are they just traders? Which would be much more close to Chinese history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wish we could all take a deeper spiritual journey and maybe rebuild everything from the inside out and learn about other sorts of powers and forces and energies that would empower the world in much safer and more wonderful ways because they're all there. The
I
fact nobody
agree.
wants to talk about that's the real problem.
Yeah. And and this may sound like a tangent, but it really isn't. Um, so bear with my fantastically diverse neurological system and brain. But one of the things I like to do when I travel, well, the more ancient the history and the site, the more I
Yeah,
want to be there and I
yeah,
want to experience it as
yeah,
deeply as I can. And so often these sites are still a sacred site of some kind.
yeah,
They might have a Christian church or a mosque or something on it
yeah,
now, but it had something else before from previous, all through history and prehistory.
yeah,
And what I find is a well done ritual in any of the
yeah,
religions
yeah,
can
yeah,
assist a person in can getting into the depth of the cosmos
yeah,
and the depth of that it's like another dimension inside.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that includes the Neolithic and Mesolithic.
mhm, yeah,
Now, those rituals are not necessary, and with a little practice, you can get to those places a whole lot faster and more easily without them. But they add a poetic sense and a sense of beauty, and there are similarities in all of them. And I know the Roman Catholic Rite and a bit of the Eastern Catholic Rite more that way than, well, the Protestant rites don't really have the ritual to go there. It's more intellectual,
yeah,
but there isn't the transubstantiation part of it.
yeah,
And um and yes, that's magic or whatever,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's a it's a working it's alchemy in a sense.
yeah,
Um Spiritual alchemy, but alchemy. And um it's something all of these organizations at their core
yeah,
have in common.
yeah,
They also have at their core in common is treating people well.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Actually, the most violent of any of them is the Old Testament. the Hebrew Bible, where go out and slaughter people. But for the most part, these are all religions at core of peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stand up for yourself. There are excuses for violence, and take care of people. You feed the widow and the orphan.
Yeah. Amen.
You give them safety. You give them a chance to survive and to thrive, according to the culture at the time. And we can connect into a deeper divine, whatever that looks like for anybody.
Yeah.
And we all have the potential.
Amen. Amen.
And it's like, well, let's just sit down and meditate to a singing bowl for a while.
I must admit, I'm pleased with my old Catholic position rather than Roman Catholic, and that's no disrespect to my Roman friends. I mean, one of my oldest friends is actually a Jesuit of all things.
Oh, they're fantastic. I love the Jesuits.
Oh, they're sort of scary and wonderful all at the same time. And Oz the Great and Terrible.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I've no axe to grind, but it would suit me less than old Catholicism, which of
right.
course is based in Holland. It's not based in Rome.
Yeah,
And why we fell out with the Romans, if that's the best way of putting it. I mean, we had a couple of serious disagreements, which tended to be about historically, they say it's about, the taking of the Virgin Mary, body and soul, into heaven to become the Queen of Heaven. That's not quite what the old Catholics were saying. It's all to do with how can people make these sorts of pronouncements and then say they're infallible. It's more to do with that sort of thing. I mean, don't you think you're embarrassing yourself? And there were arguments like, does Christ own his own clothes? Does Jesus own his clothes? Right. In other words, church hierarchy. What's
right,
all this money for? And why is it financing all these people? And why are they there? So
right.
old Catholics had this sort of democratization. In other words, it really was old Catholicism before this was put in place. And sort of we distance ourselves, or the Romans distance themselves. I mean, I'm in an odd position in the sense that we're all partially recognized by Rome. They recognized our sacraments, which they are valid in their sight. They've never said we don't perform the sacraments. And we're sort of in quasi weird positions when it comes to priesthood, because there wasn't a pope involved, but there is a hierarchy involved, blah, 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 blah. So I mean, I quite like that position. We're sort of part and parcel, but we're not.
Yeah.
And certainly it makes it easier for me hanging out with witches and druids, because an old Catholic wouldn't batter an eyelid at that.
Yeah.
And what you were saying struck me very, very forcefully. A dear friend of mine, Freya Aswin. I mean, you don't get anyone more heathen than Freya, I was terrified of her when I first met her. Oh my God, am I still terrified? I don't have to think about that. I mean, I didn't know her in the glory days. I mean, she came over from Holland, of course. That was the link. In the 80s, and I asked my dear friend Geraldine Beskin of Atlantis Bookshop in Museum Street, London, which of course is this international icon of the counterculture and occultism, this wonderful, wonderful meeting place. Geraldine, why do you think Freya was an instant success? To which I got the reply, don't be ridiculous. Leggy blonde hit 70s London. Well, there we are. So, so
Did
this
she look good in that
she was a bit
miniskirt?
of a looker. She was a bit of a
Yeah.
looker back in those days.
Uh-huh.
And a force of nature. I mean, she still is. I was talking to her the other day.
Yeah.
And, I didn't see it. I remember the stories, though, of her frightening other people. She used to march around Camden with a spear, a shield, and sort of a Viking helmet on her head with horns, and kick open the doors of a bar, saying, "Who's going to buy me a drink?" Apparently, the men were so frightened they all bought her a drink.
Oh, I like this woman.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's wonderful, my dear friend. You need her on this show. I mean, if you can get a word in edgeways. I mean, I imagine it's difficult enough with me, but trying to
Oh, this
stop
is great.
her. Well, she wrote the most important book on the runes in my humble view, in decades, maybe longer. The Leaves of Yggdrasil, which became a sort of heathen sacred text. I think it's absolutely astonishingly important in restoring knowledge of the runes and really how they are used. Not
If you
people.
wouldn't mind, after we're done, sending me a message, writing up the name and her name exactly so I can look it up and get
I
it.
will be deeply honoured, William, and I know she's just published a book, so it's a good time to get her. She's just
Right.
published her autobiography, Walking with Wodan,
Okay.
because of course she's lived here so long, the name would actually be Wodan. It wouldn't be Wotan, and it wouldn't be Odin. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at that,
Mm,
which is a page turner. Freya is a writer. Um,
right.
she hasn't written as much as I'd have liked, but certainly as I say, she's a force of nature. She was a neofolk artist in her own right.
Right.
She knows nearly everybody on the left and the right, so she's rather like me.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, in her case, they didn't. People are bastards. I'm saying that at that clergy talk. Clergy talk. People are bastards. I mean, she won't mind me saying it, it's all in the book. There was a family problem when she was growing up in Holland. Europeans hate the Dutch. We hate the Dutch because they're all so bloody advanced and they're correct, right? They're advanced and they're right, and it's annoying. I hope you're listening to this, Netherland. It's annoying, right? So the rest of us have this sort of opinion of Holland. The trouble is, in a country that's so advanced, sometimes it drops the ball. So in sort of as she was growing up, it was advanced in everything apart from childcare. And the system it had for dysfunctional families was appalling. I mean, it was Victorian. An argument started apparently between her grandparents, who were old hippies, young hippies, and her parents, who were much more strict and down to earth and normal, sane citizens. A row broke out about how they raised the girl, Freya. And basically, Freya was taken into the system. She was taken into a care home, which was Victorian. And it took her years to get out because Dutch lawyers didn't want to touch the renovation of the system because it was a hot potato. So
Okay.
poor old Freya was literally stuck when she should not have been
Right.
in the care system of Holland. As I say, the only backward institution then
Yeah.
that in the entire culture.
Yeah.
She came out and ended up with an extremely right wing gentleman who was her first paramour, her first partner when she left the system. I mean, it doesn't mean everybody's extreme and deplorable. It doesn't mean that. It just
Yeah.
means he positioned himself in that position, and he gave her an education. They used to listen to Wagner and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, that stuck. In the sort of gutter press we have nowadays, that stuck with her more than the fact she's nearly a card-carrying communist. I mean, the amount of times she's told me that she wants to turn half of London into the People's Republic of such and such, that bit hasn't stuck. But
Uh-huh.
her going out with this right-wing guy has stuck. So every now and again, there's this outburst.
And that was what, 50 years ago she went out with him?
Oh no, a long time back. Which is what I
I
mean. If
mean,
it
that's
was,
why.
more up to date, William, she'd have more of a chance of answering.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's lost in history already,
You're
and
right.
therefore all you've got sort of are statements back from that time. And
Yeah.
They haunt her periodically when people are looking for a scapegoat. So I
Right.
mean, it's one of the reasons she wrote the autobiography to try to set the record straight.
Mhm.
I will introduce you certainly. I'll send you some information and get you two in contact.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
it's up to you what you want to do, what the two of you what you want to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, she's a formidable neofolk artist. She sings Geldra, the magic of the runes, the spells, the incantations. She sings it to such a perfect level. The paranormal breaks out. That is a sign it's working, I believe.
Okay.
She has sung with most of the important British neofolk bands, either as singing someone's lyrics or joining in really on the instrumentation. Maybe if it's an ancient Celtic instrument like one of the drums. Excuse me.
Is
She would have.
and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but would the band Renaissance from the 70s be a neofolk band? Annie Hallstrom?
I would class it as neofolk. I think a
Yeah,
narrow definition of neofolk doesn't do justice to the fact it is an epicycle in the Romantic tradition. Um,
yeah,
and certainly, as you'll see in my thesis, I think it can go way back. It can go all the way back to Francois Rabelais,
okay,
the titan of the French Renaissance,
right,
who would have talked, of course, which is why Alistair Crowley, Big L, which is why he does, that was one of his previous incarnations. Is there anybody who did anything in history that wasn't one of his previous incarnations? So, I mean, Rabelais is the guy that starts saying, look, there are two streams in European culture. There's academia, but there's
right,
thelema, there's thelema, so you have the logic and the reason on one side, but you have the imagination, you have the super sensible, you have the artistic on the other side. And certainly he's one of the most important writers in French history, in European history. And the
right.
fact he wasn't included as an academic writer, I think is funny. And it shows the epistemological muddle they've got themselves into. But no one can doubt his prowess. And certainly, I think it's a mistake to think neofolk begins in the 1980s when you're looking at industrial music, slightly post-industrial music. You're looking at electronic music and all the sort of combinations with a sort of a military industrial input into the music, or is it this sort of neo-gothic instrumentation atmospheres? Are you just creating atmospheres? I mean, certainly neofolk bands today are much easier to spot because they not only advertise themselves as neofolk, but they're living up to the formula. I mean, Wardruna in Norway, they practice dark magic on stage. They're
Wow.
dressed like gods and Vikings. They live the ideal. I'm not attacking them at all. They live the ideal,
Yeah,
and their view, as far as I can interpret it, is that there's a sort of a dark, the darkness of Gununga Gap, the darkness of Gununga Gap before the creation. They tap into all of that. As Ragnarok approaches, I think Ragnarok happens every bloody 5 minutes. But I mean, in their view, we're still on the way to it.
yeah,
The fact they practice rituals on stage, real rituals, they're not going through theatrical motions, and they live the life of the real artist. Makes
mm,
wonderful, wonderful material, but easy for someone like me to spot. You are neofolk, Therefore, it wouldn't. Yeah, what you said about the Renaissance, yeah, much more difficult to categorize. But I agree with you 100%. You can even get groups like Jefferson Airplane into there if you think about their early history.
actually,
Because
yeah, that makes sense. Mhm, I
what?
hadn't thought about them that way.
Well, I mean,
And
always.
they're another one of my old favorite groups. I
I think the litmus test is always look at the early history of the group, and that will give the key. That will give
Yeah,
the way to explain it.
yeah. And Renaissance, they take me to their song "Swallow Me Up,"
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and they're not on the 3-minute radio timeline
yeah, yeah.
when
You know,
they're lasting
I've
20.
got to add. I've got to add. I mean, I'm not attacking modern neofolk groups. Did it sound like that, William? I hope it
No,
didn't.
it didn't. It didn't.
There's some
You're
very good.
expressing some of the differences, that's all.
I mean, there are
Yeah,
some wonderful groups around now, but it's very easy to identify. That's all.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I'm not aware of the modern ones or the more recent ones. I'm only half joking when I tell people that I'm far more up to date on Neolithic pop culture than I am on modern pop culture. You know. Ask
I
me to
mean, I
get to
think,
the Bronze Age.
it's all wonderful. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
place myself much more on the side of the arts than I would academia. I mean,
Mhm.
my better half, he's the scholar, not me. I'm not trying to be a scholar. What I'm trying to do is get a few projects together and cross match and cross fertilize and see where it all leads. I am not trying to be professor. That doesn't interest me. I do respect it. It's not my way. It's not my karma. But I notice in today's world, you need a couple of credentials for any door whatsoever to open.
The
Um,
MBA behind my name helps at times.
you are a legend, sir. You're a legend. You're a legend. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
intrigued because I've never thought of myself that way or heard of
oh,
that.
William, you're not only an important friend of mine. You have been there. You know that's an important criterion. Um,
Yes.
What is right? Why is it not true? What was it Lou Reed used to sing? I can't remember one of his songs. I love the Velvet Underground. I love Warhol.
Yeah.
Um, one of the great Catholic artists, of course, Andy Warhol. People forget that an
Well, that's
absolutely
right.
devout Roman Catholic,
Yeah.
which comes up in my new book. I mean, he was at mass every morning. You can't really get more devout than that. He's one of the great relief. I mean, he used to diarise everything. One of the great reliefs of his life was actually meeting one of the popes, although he wasn't technically Roman. He was one of the satellite Roman churches that collaborates with them
An
directly.
Eastern, right? Because he
Yeah,
wasn't he from Poland?
yeah,
His family, yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Um,
that's it. One of the Eastern Rite churches. I can't remember that offhand.
yeah.
Lutheran.
One of my
Um,
friends is a Byzantine Catholic priest in Hungary.
um, these are wonderful traditions. These are
Mhm.
wonderful traditions, and they're very deep. I think Rome. Now it sounds like I'm attacking Rome. I think Rome undersells itself in the sense that it forgets its own treasures. It's so busy trying to be relevant. Yes, everyone needs to be relevant. I'm not saying otherwise, but it's so busy trying. Let's shake another single mother's hand. Let's shake another third world person's hand. Let's deal with the issues, not look relevant. Let's not look relevant. Let's deal with the issues. And the resource to deal with those issues is the mystical depth of the tradition. Right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, people go crazy. How do you hold it all together? The mystical depth of your own tradition. Um, my trouble with Rome, but I'm an old Catholic, so I'm bound to have troubles with Rome. Is that it's very good at going through the modernistic motions, and it forgets far too quickly what got it in that position in the first place. Curiously, in my view, Warhol was one of the victims of that.
Mm.
He comes across, the ultimate avant-garde artist. What sort of brain, what sort of talent must that man have had? I mean, and people thought all of it was ironic, and of course, he refused to answer. He didn't want anybody involved with his personal faith. He thought there was something vulgar and sacrilegious in that.
Mm.
That's why he didn't answer. He's always deflecting if a question like that comes up because he thinks it's rude. It's as clear, it's as down to earth as that. Don't be so rude to me, please. So
Right.
he's always pushing it away.
Which is
Um,
very European for the time. Still, it's still very European.
well,
By the way,
he,
you're the first Brit I've ever heard call themselves European.
oh, I
Because
think,
yes, the
well,
Isles are part of Europe, but I always hear people on those isles refer to themselves as British or Scottish or whatever. Never, they always talk about Europe as an other.
sadly, that is in the history. Um,
Yes.
Britain's had a love-hate relationship with Europe for hundreds of years, beginning possibly with Henry VIII, maybe before that, when of course Britain was European, and it
Yeah.
was Henry VIII
Probably
broke
Normans.
all the ties. I mean, there was one currency that's happened before as well called the Byzant. Trading in Henry VIII's time would have been done in Byzance. It wouldn't have been done in any local currency. All the big
Really?
banks, yes, they were big banks then. They all traded in Byzance, and one of his
I, I,
problems was breaking out of that Was it all about women? Well, a lot to do with women, yes, but not all about women. One of
No.
his problems was breaking with the international banking system, which
Yes.
caused him huge trouble.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I tend to be one of those Brits that wears a number of identities at the same time.
Good.
A part of me is British, a part of me is German, a part of me is Italian, I seem to remember. There's a lot
Mhm.
of Welsh in me. David William Parry's the giveaway there.
Yeah.
But I'm also European.
Mhm.
I don't see this sort of Manichaean either or. Why? I think Britain has fallen out with Europe again at the moment. At least enough people to make the wrong decision, in my view. Um,
Yes.
you don't
And
throw
the
out the baby with the bathwater. It's made trading difficult. How do these people think nations survive? It's not
it's
us
also
all just.
made
Sorry, William.
oh, I'm sorry. It's also made it more difficult for Brits to travel and to move
Yeah,
elsewhere. It's made it more difficult for you to get the doctors and nurses in
yeah,
your healthcare
yeah,
system
yeah,
because so many came from Europe.
yeah.
Um, mhm. I warned people.
Yeah, I mean, bills here, domestic bills, utility bills are out of control.
Yeah.
Excuse me, there are no European safeguards now. The
Mm-mm.
local bourgeoisie are profiteering. I mean, there's no other word for it. And there are no safety nets. There are no guards now, and they don't care. I mean, one of
Yeah.
the jokes in Parliament recently was that the big corporations were saying tax us. We're making too much profit, taxes. And the weak-kneed parliamentarians, which is what they are, dis- because they all want fat jobs with the conglomerates when they leave Parliament. So, of course, they're not
Yeah.
going to do it.
Right.
I mean, we are now in a disaster, and
Mhm.
partly that is leaving Europe. I mean, even if you're one of those people that thinks Brexit was a good idea, I do not. But even if
Right.
you personally, I do not. But even if you are, there are ways of leaving something without too much damage. I mean, the amount of damage that was done to the economy is phenomenal.
Yes.
And there were MPs afterwards, mostly Labour MPs, which appear to be lapsing into delusion nowadays. They're not the sort of Labour, hard, gritty workers of the past that
Mhm.
founded things like the National Health System, which I still think is a treasure, although not for much longer.
Yep.
Um,
They've been
they
whittling
weren't,
that away
yeah.
drastically.
I mean, they weren't them. I don't know what these people are. There were certain lady MPs in the Labour Party that still thought they could vote in the European Parliament. Not being rude, but you've
What?
just left the European Parliament. No, you cannot vote.
No.
And they still wanted to say, but on what basis? The level of, but excuse me, William. Westminster has stopped being a parliament. I mean, in my view, it's now this sort of old boys club for people that want to do well in life. And that's nearly all of them. I wish the House of Lords was stronger. How about that for an irony? And
I know I'm rather shocked to hear you say that.
well, yeah, as somebody who wants to do away with the entire bourgeoisie, because at least you had a balance. At least you had a
Right.
group of people that couldn't be bought. It was that simple.
Yes.
They had their own money. They had their own status. If they didn't agree with you, no, you wouldn't shake them. But that's
Right.
gone effectively now. There is an unstoppable first chamber, which can do now nearly whatever it wants, and there is no one and nothing to stop it.
Right.
Um, so no, I can see nothing but undemocratic disaster ahead of this country in the immediate future. Today there were huge marches by people calling themselves patriots, led by the eponymous Tommy Robinson.
Oh
I'm not going
God.
to go into the facts. Yeah, I'm not giving my opinion. You can all guess. I'm not giving my views. All I am saying is that it's roughly estimated that 80,000 people descended on London today waving various flags. And why does that depress me? Maybe not for the reasons people think. It doesn't excite me, but it doesn't it doesn't depress me. Is everybody in that march talking about the same thing? Britain at the moment can't even protest. It can't even be right wing and left wing. I noticed when I was watching some of the footage earlier, there were Welsh flags, yeah. There were Scottish flags, yeah. There were also Persian flags, the flags of the Shah. Now, what's it got
Yes.
to do with him? Do they think the Shah is going to suddenly jet in and say, well, this nonsense in Parliament's got to stop? No, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it. That is a total irrelevancy. But let's have an argument about the Shah. That will get things going. I mean, the whole thing is sinking into delusion. And on the other side, the Tory party, I'll put my cards on the table to this extent. I've no faith in Republicans or Democrats. In other words, Tory or Labour. Zero faith in both sides, because it strikes me they're all lining their pockets and all wanting this big fat job after they've served their term, because they know full well voters aren't going to put them in that position forever. So they line their pockets the minute they get there and then go off to a fat job being an advisor. All of them are just a complete shower, a total mess. Why do I think that? Results. We were
Yes.
talking about age at the beginning of the show. If anybody really wanted to change anything for the better in this country, by 68, I would have seen it. But in all these years, I can't think of a single time where somebody's come up with a good idea and seen it through. So, in other words, they don't want anything to change. They want everything exactly as it is, with the mugs and the cattle, putting them back in these positions, but not for too long. Let's get away as quickly as we can to working for one of the international conglomerates. So that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
And Brexit has made it worse. As I
Yes.
say, if we wanted more autonomy is never a bad thing. Liberty is never a bad thing. Remember, I'm a British libertarian, which doesn't mean what it means in America. What it means here is a Whig, one of the founders of the other side of Parliament. What it means here is a Whig. The first thing I noticed during those debates was nobody was talking about liberty. So it really shows what you're all talking about. Let's get away from Europe. Okay, what do you want when we're away from Europe? Which nobody would answer. And it wasn't about liberty at all. It was about small agendas, all of which smashed into each other the minute it happened with that monster. No, I better not mention names. There was one particular
made a lot of progress this last local election cycle.
Well, I mean, the local elections are local elections. Has anything changed? No. So they've got a couple of local reform. I don't know what I think of reform. I think Farage is a rich man wanting power. I also think he's a man that gets changed.
Brexit into
careful, William. He says he does, but people say all sorts of things, don't they? Be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah, I just knew he was the face of that whole process and the spreader of misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, he sees himself as this sort of singular Brit. To be fair to him, he did seem to mean that when he was an MEP in the European Parliament. So he does believe in sort of flag waving and the royal family and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But now he's a Brit in a British Parliament. What is it you stand for exactly? And nobody seems to know. He doesn't seem to know. But he's got this incredible knack of getting people on his side if they're not listening carefully.
Right.
He's got the persona and he's got the sort of pizzazz, that's a wonderful American word, of getting people to think he has said something when actually he hasn't. So, as I say, I see nothing apart from, personally, and please everybody prove me wrong, please, 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 I see nothing but disaster after disaster ahead of us until we all take the inner step and embrace the inner life and realize that the earth is a living being, an angel, and we have to make a pact. We have to make a promise to live with the life of the angel properly and have eco communities and all the rest of it. Yes, I'm an old hippie. I'm proud of it.
Yes, me too. Yeah, and I wasn't allowed to be one when I was a kid, and I wasn't quite old enough to run away from home and be one. Close, but not quite, and far too timid to have done that anyway. But no, some of the people I know, that's a different story, but we won't go there. But yeah, it's interesting. And, we have a few here that really want and really do fight for change. They're all on the the Democrat Party, and for positive change, human change. Some of them are really very realistic about having to do a lot of education and integral steps to get there. Some are a little more radical, but they're a small enough number that they're overpowered. They don't get the votes. And, there are so many advantages to a cumbersome system in that you can't make willy-nilly decisions and keep changing your mind. But it's also gotten to the point where it's such a monstrosity that a handful of people control their party and their party jumps. And when that party's in the majority and has control, and so I give some of my two senators are brilliant and they really work hard for humanity. Unfortunately, I can only think of about 3 or 4 or 5 others that do. But so I totally agree with the general philosophy of what you're saying, and it's very much here. And it is what it is. Part of what my job is to radically accept what is. That doesn't mean you agree with it, and it doesn't mean you don't resist it or look to do what you can. But okay, this is the reality. Now what do I do about it? Or do I do anything about it? And how? And that's an important starting point, at least for me. And then,
100%, 100%.
And then where is it all coming from? How much of this is from anger, from ego, from whatever, and how much of this is genuine connection to that which is other? And
it just amazes me that people can't see their own inner lives as themselves.
Yes.
It's not wasting time. I mean, it amazes me people don't enjoy reading as much as they used to, because that's exercise for the brain. I mean, it's working out for the brain. So that sort of confuses me. The fact that they're leaving parts of themselves fallow, that just strikes me as odd. I think there's a lot against people nowadays. At the end of the day, I'm some sort of people person, I think. Human beings are largely okay, but there's so much against. So they're being reduced. They're being quantified. I mean, I'm not against AI. I mean, AI is always very pleasant to me and about me. So, but I've noticed with youngsters, the systems that are being employed are more controlling and manipulative than maybe they should be. And we've all got to the Western world, if there is still such a thing, which I'm tempted to say there may not be. But if it is there, even if the vestiges are there, this is the time when we renew our vision. We have to go back to the beginning to see what was good, and there was so much that was good about our journey.
And also recognize that which wasn't good. And how do we work and build the good, not the other? Because all of these countries were exploitive. I mean, well, look at your islands. Humanity didn't start there. There was wave after wave of different peoples. Here, the same kind of way, only instead of happening literally a million years ago, it happened anywhere from 17 to 19,000 years ago. The dates are a little unsettled yet. There's research. The oldest signs of humans on this continent or in the Americas is actually in my state.
Wow.
And not far from where I lived from years 1 to 4, out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. Thank God we moved from there. Anyway, it would not have been a fun place to grow up. Town of 250 people.
Right.
And then once you start figuring out that you're different,
Yeah. Yeah.
that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
I doubt if I would have survived that. But I'm sorry. There was a purpose for that, and I was going somewhere with it, and
Ancient monuments,
it's kind of
ancient
oh yeah,
Americans.
the Paisley Caves, and but I was just watching some history, and you have artifacts from obviously not modern humans, because Homo sapiens have only been around for 200 or 300,000 years, but
Yeah.
they have found man-made artifacts in the UK that go back to 900,000 to
Yeah.
a million BCE.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they found artifacts from humanity during ice ages,
Yeah.
including earlier ones when it's definitely not Neanderthal or modern humans.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pre-modern.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. But I mean, all of these peoples come, they don't develop and sprout out of the ground. We've all been wave after wave out of Africa, then mutating or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it,
Yeah.
evolving in different places.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't know how typical I am, but my mom's father's side was the British side of our family, and we came over in 1635. Other than that, my dad's parents immigrated here, a married couple. They had a baby and one on the way, both which died.
Oh.
Um, Grandma spoke 3 languages. None of them were English.
Yeah.
Um, and I knew both of my grandparents, the immigrants, and my grandmother. Shoot, I was in my 20s when she passed. And for most of my life, she lived 7 miles away,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And my grandfather, I was 4, but I knew him.
Yeah.
And then on my mom's mother's side, it's Finnish.
Yeah.
Mom's grandparents immigrated, and I knew my great grandmother.
Yeah.
I was in 2nd grade when she passed. And so I've known the immigrants. I mean, we're that close.
Yeah.
Everybody has been shifting over. And
Yeah.
for people to not get the need, the connection, how entwined all of us are,
Yeah.
I to me it makes life richer.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, last night I had friends, new friends, but people becoming very good friends that have just moved here from Turkey. And I have a soft spot for Turkey anyway.
Yeah.
Not the government, but the people and the history and the art and all
Yeah.
the rest in the cradle of civilization.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. And he doesn't speak English. She is learning
Yeah.
and getting better and better. But it was 7 hours of fabulous company,
Yeah.
and they brought most of the food, and so fabulous food too.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
But, that's the kind of thing I grew up with. I grew up with people from different parts of the world around me.
Yeah.
I grew up with accents around me. My
Yeah.
grandmother had a heavy accent.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. At university, I had friends and staff from Iraq and Iran both
Yeah.
including during the time they're fighting each other.
Yeah.
Great people.
Yeah.
People aren't enemies, governments are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Religions aren't enemies,
Yeah.
fundamentalists are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
excuse me, in my particular case, I mean, the Irish side of my family went to England during the potato famine.
Yeah.
So that element in me can be traced all the way back to then. I mean, my stepfather was actually a Roman Catholic living in Northern Ireland. Now that was tough. We heard a great many of those stories. Pretty terrifying.
Yes.
And in my particular case, of course, my better half is an Iranian Muslim,
Yeah.
so and a migrant. So what was my attitude to the so-called problem? I decided to get married.
Yeah.
People are people. People are wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to whitewash. There's a pun there somewhere. Western history. I just think at the moment we're so we're so racked with guilt, some of which is justified. We're
Yeah.
so racked with guilt. We also tend to forget that it was us that tried to put a stop to the slave trade. If we're
Yes.
coming to cases, in certain parts of the world, it never finished.
Yeah.
And also, I don't see why the Arabic slavers have gone invisible nowadays, because they were as bad as any European, and they traded with Europe. What
Yes.
I'm against is, as you know, fantasy history.
Right.
It's in where our gang is always right and your gang is always wrong.
Which is
Because
the push in this country right now.
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it won't lead anywhere. I mean, I was speaking recently at the University of Glasgow. There was an event going on. Dan was holding a pitcher kutcher event, which I've discovered a new talent. I can do pitcher kutcher. And Japanese by origin, I seem to recall. And
Yeah.
I was saying, my trouble. What was my basic trouble with Western civilization as it's inherited at the moment is actually the colonial mindset. It's not even colonization in itself. I mean, that finished a long time ago, but the mindset is still going.
It is. And it's
And
economic
yeah.
colonialization now.
Well,
Mhm.
excuse me again. I'm convinced it always was, but
Yes.
I'm not a historian. I don't want to get into that. But I suspect you're looking at greedy people doing very greedy things.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and that's why so much of the world is still one of the pivotal reasons why so much of the world is still unhappy with the West, because I don't think reparations are simply money. I mean, I know certain activists here as well as there are saying that. I can't see that solving anything. Some of the reparations are financial, yes, obviously, but if somebody has done me a wrong, paying me may not be the best way of healing me.
No.
Or healing them.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's this sort of weird Manichaean way of thinking that's got into the West. I don't think it was always there, but the yes, no, right, wrong, and there's nothing in the middle. The whole of life is in the middle. Unless we can sort of break out of that and again start talking.
Mhm.
Um, there's no real way forward. I'm going to give you an absolutely bizarre example of what I mean. Have I told you my UFO story? I can't remember if I did that on your last show.
I don't remember.
Well, I'm not a UFO believer. I'm a UFO knower because I saw one.
Right.
We were all at excuse me, early secondary school, late primary school. I grew up in a place called Fareham in Hampshire, very rural back in those days, pretty rural now actually. Therefore, there weren't all these choices of schools to go to. Right, that's the school, that's the other one. Which one are you going to? So there, and it was quite a small community. One of the triggers for that is you mentioned small communities. Um, it's only the penny only dropped with me a couple of years ago that I was disliked. I was disliked because I was different. And it was clear to other people what the difference was, but it wasn't clear to me. It just turns into confusion. What have I
Right.
done wrong now? And you actually haven't done anything wrong, but it's them
Right.
picking up on things that they won't even talk about. So
Yeah.
I'm very empathetic to that. But there was one morning, perfectly clear blue sky, beautiful blue sky, when a silvery disc floated over the playground. Everybody saw it, so it wasn't just me. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't the weather because it was a cloudless sky.
Mhm.
Quite high up, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Wow.
And it was silent. There wasn't a single sound. And what struck me even then as a kid was the different reactions in the playground. So I was struck by its beauty. and and I wasn't the first person to see it. It was actually somebody stood by me. Look at that, and then I looked up, and I was struck with its beauty. Some of the kids in the playground started fighting, so that's fear. That's fear. Some ran off and hid. I actually think that's more like survival. But fear, I think I can see what they're doing there. And why is this story relevant? The more robust of us, me included, went to where the teachers were. It was break time, and said, "There's a UFO floating over the playground," and they said, "Go away, we're having our tea." And we couldn't get them out for anything. And when we all got back into class, the first thing the teacher said was, "We don't want any more talk of UFOs, and let's get on with our lessons." So
Wow.
much for the inquiring human mind, and it's that somehow it's that mindset which has slowly dominated in Europe. It's not the mindset of the Renaissance. It's not the mindset of the Enlightenment, which were two beautiful and important events in global history, not just European
Yes.
history.
Yes.
But something has happened since then that's made us yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad, and ugly, pretty. That's really what's driving our present dissolution, and why I suspect we can't even really work out what's aggrieving other civilizations and why they're so often in the right.
Yes.
And pretending nothing happened, nothing bad happened is just ignorance and cruel, and it doesn't mean anything will be healed. I mean, the
Right.
hurt will remain. But
Right.
equally, if indigenous Europeans and Americans are beaten with a stick so far, so either you get loads of dead bodies or you get resentment. There again, there's no healing.
Right.
So when I think of Western civilization, I tend to think of the arts, I tend to think of music. Is there anyone in Latin America that wouldn't really appreciate Beethoven, Mozart? I doubt it. The amount of people I've met from over there, they loved it when, even if they hadn't heard it, they loved it when they had heard it. The paintings, the intrepid spirit of exploration. I'd love to go to those places. I might have left it a bit late for this particular incarnation, but I'd love to go to those places. I welcome them here.
Yeah.
Again, back to what you were saying about the spirit of not only mutuality but camaraderie. We've so
Yes.
much in common. But yeah, so I'm not pretending there isn't an issue and a series of issues. Most certainly there is. I
Right.
mean, there were some people, friends of mine, years back, who told me a saying from India: "Never trust the East India Company." And I'd never heard
True.
that before. And of course, they were right. Look at the history,
Uh-huh.
from Clive of India onwards. I mean, that's a bit odd because the British have sort of had this stormy love affair with India for most of its history. So that's a complex
Yeah.
one. And you had, I mean, weird things like the princes of India wanting to come and have tea with Queen Victoria. So it's complicated and it's difficult. But that's not to defuse the problem there, but it is to say let's not forget the nuance. And let's not forget, that if we just go into a room with a truncheon and beat everybody to the ground, that will solve nothing in both ways. In both ways.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I fessed up about my UFO experience, William. So,
I love that. I've seen one too. Um, I don't say it's from outer space. It's unidentified.
yeah,
It could be interdimensional. It could be extraterrestrial. I don't know. Um, I was 17, 18,
yeah,
and we had some property on a river just for recreation. And a friend of mine and I'd pick him up sometimes, and we'd go out there, and we'd be midnight on a Friday or Saturday, and we'd be talking out there. And multi-story round, lots of different colored lights moving around
yeah,
slowly. Um, Huge and low, very low. And in fact, it looked like it went down behind a little bit of a hill and some trees not that far away. And we walked back to my car, and we're talking about, said, I bet I could find that.
yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
back roads and stuff. It's not where I live, but it makes enough sense. And then by the time we actually got in the car, oh, we might find that. We came home instead, the opposite direction,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
we don't know what it is or what's
yeah,
going on.
yeah.
And I was I wasn't willing to be an experiment.
Yes. Well, I mean,
I
likewise.
dissected plenty of things by that point in biology class. I didn't want to be on that table.
Well, I mean,
S
likewise, I'm not saying what it is. I've never said what it is. I'm just saying that was the phenomena.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
near Fareham, I grew up, as I say, in a sort of market town called Fareham. I mean,
Mhm.
if you go further on towards Portsmouth, that actually does have a Royal Naval base. So
Okay.
who knows? Who knows? I just think, looking back in that time frame, that's exceedingly unlikely because it wasn't flying; it was floating. It
Yes.
didn't make any noise at all, and I don't think, no matter what secret experiments the British armed services are up to, and I'm sure they're up to loads, I don't think that would have fitted the time frame, and it didn't fit the phenomena. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what it was, but I know it occurred.
Yes. And I know that we acquired information after World War II from Germans that were working on anti-gravity
Yeah,
anti-gravity propulsion devices. I know the West was working on that. I know the Soviets were. Um, I don't know. I hear rumors about different kinds of
yeah,
failed experiments and stuff. I have no idea what the truth is about all that.
yeah,
And I'm pretty careful about.
yeah,
I want my facts. I want it
yeah,
documented. I want
yeah,
credible facts.
yeah,
Um, and I miss card catalogs in the library
yes,
and books that you go in and you know exactly
yeah,
the story of that book and who
yeah,
wrote it
yeah,
and what their credentials are. And
yeah. Then what
Mhm.
you've reminded me of something. Excuse me, I'm getting a frog in my throat. What struck me, there was an American psychiatrist, socio-psychiatrist, I can't remember, John Mack, who wrote an
Oh,
incredible book on ufology.
okay.
He was treating it as a he didn't say it wasn't true. What he said was there are a number of people who claim to have been abducted, and those testimonies cannot simply be ignored on a clinical level. I mean, that doesn't sound revolutionary. That is revolutionary.
Mhm.
So he's not saying he knows what happened. He is saying there are symptoms and there are people suffering, and there is a story that they're all giving which strangely matches. I mean, I don't know why the world of psychology and psychiatry, which I've got enormous respect from, isn't examining these anomalies more carefully. I mean, that's where new science is born. I mean, that strikes me as
Great.
odd. But, there was him he was the one that started talking about the spiritual dimension of all of this. And it was I mean, it struck me, I'll mention this before I get to the author. It struck me ages ago that what was being described, you said it yourself, a body on a table, but they never perform a surgical procedure. I mean, it's more like a ritual. They surround the person, there are words spoken, things happen in a ritualistic fashion, and then someone's back to square one. I mean, but if you're that advanced and you can cross intergalactic space, avoid black holes, the penetration of space debris, and the minute you get here, you crash, or you want to do a surgical procedure. I mean, first of all, the crashing makes no sense. One
No,
or
it
two
doesn't.
times, yes, but not all the time. So that's bizarre or untrue or something else.
Yeah.
And so, all right, let's look at that a bit further. What is it you're trying to do? I mean, how many surgical procedures do you need to do to find the same thing? I'll pay the money. I'll send you a copy of Grey's Anatomy. I mean,
Yeah.
what trouble are they having with something they must have done time and time and time again? Oh, it's a survey. How many times do they need to survey the Earth? The American Navy can give them a map What are they struggling with? So it strikes me that there's something behind all of that, which spiritual people, esotericists, should really be much more engaged with, because it's the same type of phenomena that was mentioned in the witch trials. The witch trials were not simply, my God, I'm not whitewashing the witch trials. The witch trials, I'd have been burnt at the stake for a start. So, for two reasons, not a heretic and a puff. So, I'm
Yeah,
not
you would
trying to
have been burned as a heretic. You would have been hung as a witch.
Well, I'm sure they'd have gone for all of it, William.
Yeah.
So, I'm not trying to whitewash what was going on. What I am saying is, as usual, right, wrong, yes, no is the wrong way of looking at things. Let's
Right.
not throw out the baby with the bathwater, because some of the phenomenon that comes out at these so-called trials are exactly what people are talking about today. But from the
Yeah.
descriptions they're using are different. I mean, the author I was thinking of was John Mitchell, who passed on a couple of years ago. He wrote a book called The View Over Atlantis, which I read as a teenager and have huge time for. He sort of had a second thrust years later, The New View Over Atlantis, which I didn't think was as successful. But there are little things that come out in that. Like once upon a time, people have talked about enchanting fairy circles and being taken by the fairies. But now there are just horrible alien craft that appear and make circular holes in the ground and take you on board and torture you. But that's so close a parallel. So why was it charming and magical back then? Which people say it was. There are examples of that. There are testimonies of that. And why has this phenomenon changed its nature now to something horrific and terrifying? Are we so far out of sync with the hidden forces around us that now their manifestation is brutish and on the verge of a nightmare?
That's interesting.
Well, it's what the ancients used to say. The gods, they put up with everything. They put up with everything, but it gets to a certain point where their manifestation is only one of punishment and an attack. It's only one of punishment and judgment, and that seems to be what we're looking at the moment. I mean, there were some NASA scientists. Their names will escape me at the moment because it's late here. Forgive me.
Well, we should probably. We've been going for an hour and 42 minutes. We should probably end this
Round it off.
quick.
Round it off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sort of Close Encounters of the First Kind, wonderful movie, hippies in space. I mean, the French guy Lecomte was actually based on a NASA researcher who was from France, who wrote a couple of books. The name is here, and it's going backwards and forward. Who wrote a book? I think one was Agents of Deception, if I'm correct, where he's actually saying all this has happened before, but the descriptions are different, but it's the same type of phenomena. And so, and why do they lie so much? I mean, that's the other comment. If these energies are coming wearing their violent face, wearing their punishment face, you'd expect that. They're no longer giving the hand of friendship or giving the hand of healing, because we've gone past that stage and we still haven't mended our ways. Now it's punishment.
All mass hysteria.
Yeah. I mean, so I just think these are very old energies, mostly. I don't think it's, UFOs are not the same thing. There's not a uniform, there's a pun there, a uniform phenomenon. It's lots of different things. Sometimes it's military tech. Sometimes it's some hidden genius in his shed trying to do unusual things. Sometimes maybe it's people from elsewhere. Maybe it's sometimes it's beings completely from elsewhere. But the minute you start talking about interdimensionality, it strikes me that you're back on very familiar turf. Because what else is an angel or a demon apart from an interdimensional entity? So you're back on very you're back on very familiar ground.
Yeah. Oh, this has been fantastic. You've woken me up.
William, you're a singularly wonderful person. I think that. I wish
feel the same about you, David. I really do.
Well, I wish I was a better interlocutor, but I don't know. I put things on the agenda, and then other things creep up the ladder of things to do. So, but I must amend that with all of my chums. But again, I mean, not till possibly I've done my work with the Scandinavians, because they keep saying to me at the minute, well, I mean, the book's floating around, isn't it? Why don't you just get it in? So at the moment, I'm finishing my new book of poetry. I'm finishing this work on Ibsen.
Right.
So I will do better with everybody, your wonderful company included. But so I'm just saying to everybody, please be patient with me. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. You know,
You're doing fine. You
thank you.
really are.
Thank
And I appreciate you to no end.
you.
And
Likewise.
Daniela too. I mean, you've got an amazing man as a husband.
My rock, my breath, my light. I wouldn't be in a position to do half the things I'm currently doing without my wonderful Iranian.
Mhm.
And I've learnt lots of things about the Western media. I'll just say one thing. In Iran, they have a very great respect for the Blessed Virgin, the Virgin Mary. In fact,
Islam does.
In Tehran, not too long ago, a couple of months ago, a year back, there was a metro station they opened dedicated to the Virgin Mary.
Mhm.
And it was on all their TV stations, and got learned imams posing and posturing. So that's universal then. Oh, look how proud we are of this metro dedicated to the Blessed Virgin. I defy anyone to say there was more than a dribble of coverage by the Western press. I see all the time
I
that
didn't hear
Christians
anything.
are hiding in house churches and they're afraid for their lives, which I know for a fact isn't true. But
Right.
you know, we please let's all get beyond the yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad, and evolve. Let's evolve. Why is that such
Yeah.
a scary thing? Because it might do us all good, and we might all be happier.
Yeah. I agree with you. One of the places I went a couple times in Turkey is just outside of Ephesus, and it's where
Amen.
John was supposed to have taken Mary to live
Yeah,
after,
yeah,
and it is a shrine, and the building is of the right time period. It does go back to the first century. That doesn't mean because we don't even know if these people existed, let alone,
yep, 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 yep.
I, I'm, yeah. Anyway, um, but it's a shared holy site with the Muslims and the Christians,
Yeah,
and it was the only place I went that had military security. Well, the first
yeah,
time. The second time I didn't see it. But the security was pretty tight. And I think the second time we still had to put our camera bags through the metal detector and stuff. But it was the only place, because being a joint site,
yeah,
that they had to be careful.
yeah.
One of the places by where my friend's parents live. No, yeah, no, that's not that one. It's a different place where I stayed the second trip there. It's a Orthodox or a church
Yeah,
during services, and then during Friday prayers and Saturday morning, the curtains pulled across the iconostas, and it's a mosque.
yeah, 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 yeah,
The cemetery by it has um, Islamic graves and Christian graves.
yeah, yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah. That's a
So
beautiful story to finish on.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
David, thank you so much. And please give my love to your husband too.
I will
And
pass it on, William.
okay. And we'll chat
We'll
before
chat.
2 months longer. Yeah. Okay.
Take care, William.
Bye-bye. You
God
too.
bless. Bye bye.